Elite Eight of the things that will make or break the Saints season.
Yeah, you said 8 things that'll take the Saints down. Some of these things could lift the Saints up.
They
Come
might.
on. Positive. Think positive.
There's not a lot of positivity in the fan base right now. That's just kind of where things are at. But yeah, look, man, there's a lot of things that I think are pretty interesting as far as these different areas where they could go. And we're going to go through them. We're going to pick them, and we're going to take it just kind of right down the tournament bracket. Yeah.
We'll start in the what? The Metairie region?
You want to start in the Metairie region? Where's that? We going with the new offense versus the new run defense, the make or break bracket here. The new offense, obviously, you got Clint Kubiak. The run defense is not where it should be right now. If the new offense is, I don't know, the run defense. So like we're gonna call that Duke. That's Duke versus NC State here. Which way are you going?
You got the new offenses, NC State.
NC State, man. That big man is balling, man.
I feel like the run defense.
Brandon Thomas.
They want the big man in their run defense, man.
Brandon Thomas, but lighter on his feet. Brandon ain't that light on his feet.
I think the new offense is the 1 seed here, and the run defense would be the upset. But the run defense is sort of like the hidden thing that they just haven't gotten better, and they haven't really done anything major to fix it. Unless they add a draft pick or a June 1st or whatever you want to say, May 1st free agent signing. But I also don't think the run defense is nearly as important. I mean, I think the new offense is the obvious choice here. We're going to agree on these. This is going to be collaborative. But this is the make or break part. I mean, this is the one area where we kind of have hope for this team, where there's actually room for major improvement, especially with what we saw at the end of Derek Carr last year. We love the Clint Kubiak hire. We love that they brought in John Benton, Rick Dennison, the veteran guys who could fix this offensive line run game. I think the new offense is the number one reason for new hope on this team. Isn't that one of the biggest make or break factors in this whole team this year?
Yeah, we really kind of got like the 1 seed versus the 16 here because, the run defense is what it is. And if the new offense is good, that takes something off the run defense. So that helps a little bit too. I think I'm going to move ahead just easily here with the new offense. I feel good about it. I feel good about the direction they're going. This is hope versus pessimism. I'm going to go with hope on this one, I think.
How much could I agree? So Brandon can start typing new offense into round 2, but just real quick, how much could a bad run defense sink this team if they don't get that fixed? Do they miss the playoffs again, or can they survive a poor run defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if they keep Marshawn, you want to be stopping the run, force teams to pass. You don't want them even considering running on like 3rd and 4th or whatever. Like, and we saw that at times last year. So it was definitely better if they're in that situation. So yeah, if they can't stop the run, I think it does cost them a game somewhere. The net collaborative effect of it at some point, I think, does cost you a game because if teams are running on you like that too, the other thing that plays into that is the pass rush. Like, you don't have good pass rush or anything too. So like everything kind of plays together into that. So I think you're failing in multiple places if your run defense is as poor as it was last season. So I think that's just kind of like a net cumulative effect there. So yeah, they definitely, if the run defense is bad, they aren't making the playoffs.
We mentioned the other day that signing Willie Gay Jr. should hopefully help with the way quarterbacks have been running all over them, especially last year, the last couple years. But I agree. This belongs in the Elite Eight, but it doesn't move into the Final Four.
Absolutely. All right. Moving down on that side of the bracket, the offensive line versus the pass catchers.
I think offensive line has a chance to win this thing. So I'm going to put that ahead of pass catchers. I mean, look, I'm really confident in Chris Olave. I'm really confident in Rashid Shaheed. We're excited to see what A.T. Perry could do. Cedric Wilson was a nice signing. We think they're still going to add one more player, whether it's a tight end or a draft pick maybe in the receiver group. Juwan Johnson can only be better. I feel pretty good about the pass catchers. I'd like to see them take a step forward, but I don't think they're going to be like the run defense. I don't think pass catchers is a weakness. The offensive line is the big screaming, the fire is coming, and it's kind of out of control right now. They need to add talent. They need to coach it better. They need the guys that they have to be healthier and play better. I think offensive line has a chance to win this whole thing.
Here's the thing. You could add like Justin Jefferson to the pass catcher mix, and it wouldn't matter if they don't have starting caliber offensive tackles. And right now they need
I'd like to see.
Well,
I'd like to try it.
He ain't getting on the field very far, but you got to be able to block just to take advantage of those guys. You're not going to be able to take full advantage of them if you can't block. Now, I do kind of think that there very likely could be an agreement with someone to where maybe, hey, like we'll hit you up after the draft, like because that's when that no longer factors into the comp pick formula after the draft, and we've seen Tyron sign that. We saw Jameis sign that. We saw Jarvis Landry sign after that date. There's sometimes these agreements in place, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Avonte Maddox join the team after then too. Very early visit, kind of disappears. I kind of feel like he's coming back, and it was just kind of like, hey, we're going to do this, but we aren't going to execute it until then, or we'll revisit it then. I wouldn't be surprised to see like Mekhi Becton be one of them guys. It feels like there has to be something in the works right now with what they know.
Okay, so Mekhi Becton comes in, or Andrus Peat comes in, whether or not they draft a guy on in round one. But I mean, they're still not saviors. I mean, it helps a little, but man, I still want that round one pick. I
think you still make a round one pick, but you need two.
Yeah,
So I think you cover one because it's going to be really hard to cover two in the draft, and then counting on pick 45 to be a starter is a long shot. So I just feel like there has to be something in the works. I don't know. We've watched them operate for too long to believe that that's kind of just. There's
I guess the only thing that would stop them from signing a guy like that is if they end up drafting two guys in the first 100 picks or something like that. Even then, they might still need the veteran. We'll talk more about the offensive line in a minute, though, because they have made it to the Final Four.
Yeah, they're making it further than the Final Four. All right, round one on the other side, Dennis Allen versus the secondary.
Secondary is interesting because it includes Marshawn Lattimore. The fact that we still don't know for sure if Marshawn Lattimore is on this team, you could make a case for Marshawn Lattimore being available versus Marshawn Lattimore being traded as being as important as anything we're talking about today. But I'm still going to go with Dennis Allen. I mean, I don't know how many wins difference Dennis Allen can make strictly by like learning how to be a better head coach, by being able to reach the guys more, motivate the guys more. I mean, the fact that he hired Clint Kubiak already and the staff changes he made on offense, he's already done part of what he needed to do this year. He has some things as the defensive coordinator, the de facto defensive coordinator for this team, that he's not got to clean up, including the run defense. And he's got to get these guys on board after, the buy-in. I think it's gotten harder each year that they've missed the playoffs for him to sell that buy-in to the players in the locker room. So I think he's got an incredible job. He's got an impossible job with the fan base. The fan base is already out on him, it feels like. I don't know that it's as dire inside the building. I know it's not as dire inside the building with the decision makers on top, but just a huge year for him, and he has to do it as a head coach. He has to do it as the defensive coordinator of this team. But I don't want to overlook the importance of the secondary. Could be a make the team, like we were talking about the new offense, the optimistic. If they get Marshawn Lattimore back, and they've got Paulson Adebo, and they've got Alontae Taylor taking a step forward, and they've got Jordan Howden taking a step forward, it could be a strength of the team. But I'm leaning toward Dennis Allen in this matchup.
I'm going secondary here.
Okay.
And I think the secondary could make or break the team. If Marshawn's not part of it and they're poor, like that's something that breaks it. If Marshawn's here, it makes it. So I think it kind of covers it on both sides. I understand the frustration with DA, and I understand the pessimism around him and everything, but ultimately he's 17-18 as the head coach of the Saints. He's fine. Like there's a lot of people that aren't good coaches that end up with like good quarterbacks or whatever, and they get carried by it. Like I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's great at his side of the ball. I think that there's things that he probably would tell you he could do better leading the overall room and everything. So I'm not trying to make a case for him like as a reason for anything. I'm just saying that I think that some of this stuff is a little bit overblown at times with the conversation in terms of like, he's the worst coach in team history.
No,
I saw someone saying the other day, like, come on, he's 500. He's the definition of average. And I think if you give him some things around him, it elevates him a little bit. So look, but everything is kind of to his making. He brought in Derek Carr. He brought in a lot of different stuff. So to me, I'm going, but I think it's secondary here. I think the secondary could drown him, and I think that it could elevate him. So with that one kind of going both ways, I feel like that's kind of a bigger story. And to me, like DA is just kind of a fixed asset at this point. So it's kind of like it's just
I do agree with that concept. We're not saying that Dennis Allen is great, and that he hasn't done a poor job or anything like that. But fixed asset is the right word. I don't think there's as much wiggle room with how much better DA can be or how much worse DA can be. There's a ton of wiggle room in how much this secondary can become an elite NFL secondary or a problem that kind of you loosen one string and the whole thing falls apart if the secondary isn't strong for this team. So I do agree with the secondary having more variance that will make or break this team.
Yeah, look, I don't want to be out here like it's like I'm rallying behind DA or anything either. I just think the conversation's gotten a little bit out of control a little bit. It's just kind of like he's just kind of been fine. Like it's just, but like fine took a while to get there. I think this year's make or break for him though, and I think he could absolutely coach his way out of the building too. Like I think there's a lot riding on this season. I think expectations haven't been met. I think there's a lot of stuff there, but the fact that like every time I go on Twitter, it's just like he's the worst coach to ever live, and it's like he's 500 in this situation. So I think it just should be had in that context, but I don't think 500 is acceptable either. But I also think that, and I include myself in this, like I think we've overrated the roster at times too, and I think I definitely did that last year. I definitely thought they had more on the team than they did last year, and that kind of elevated expectations. Having said that, they came one game shy of meeting kind of the baseline expectation of everything. So I don't know, man. It just feels like it's gotten a little bit wacky just in terms of how far that conversation has gone. But I understand him being on the hot seat and all that, and he should be.
Yeah, just like the run defense. He definitely belongs in the Elite Eight conversation. But, yeah, just more variance in the secondary, I think.
All right, Derek Carr versus the pass rush.
For the same thing, it's hard to call Derek Carr a known asset, but because things were so much worse than we expected early last season, and then even better than I think people realized late last season. And we've mentioned a bunch of times on here over the last 6 weeks of the season, he had 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and the best passer rating of any full-time quarterback in the league over that stretch. But and he's starting over in a new system, so we don't know exactly how he's going to take to that. But I don't think Derek Carr is going to turn into a top 5 quarterback, and I don't think he's going to turn into a bottom 5 quarterback. I don't think there's a lot of variance there. The pass rush, on the other hand, tons of it. We're talking make or break the season. If Chase Young delivers, if Peyton Turner delivers, if Isaiah Foskey delivers, if Cam Jordan's healthy and plays better than he played last year, if they draft a guy early, if they still add another guy, there's so much more. This pass rush could be better. Or the bottom could drop out on this pass rush if none of those things happen. So along those lines of what could make or break the team, and the fact that the pass rush makes everything go, makes the secondary better. It puts pressure on quarterbacks. I feel like similar conversation we just had. Pass rush is going to beat Derek Carr for that reason.
Yeah, and look, I think the only variance, well, not the only variance, but the major variance with Carr, I think, is tied to the offensive line, which we have him round 2
and tied to the new offense, which we also have going.
Like he can be fine, if everything works out. But if the O-line stinks, there is a reality where he could be bottom 5 because they can't block for him. But that wouldn't be because of him. Like it'd be because the O-line is failing. So if we're gonna use the same criteria we use at the top half of this bracket, we should use it at the bottom. And I agree with you. Pass rush goes through for me.
All right. Just out of curiosity, does Derek Carr, sum total, have a better season this year or leave a more favorable impression of the fan base than he did last year, you think? You think a better year this year than last year?
If they can block a little bit, I think a better year than last year for sure. But if they can't block, he's probably hurt again. He's probably having another terrible season. DA's probably, very, very much in a flaming hot seat at that point. And I think everything kind of goes down very, very quickly if they can't block. So there is so much riding on that, and we're kind of having the conversation right now. So let's flip it over to round 2, other side, the Metairie side of the bracket, I guess. New offense versus offensive line. For me, it's the O-line going through. I think it's just such a critical thing. And when you look at it and you have no starting offensive tackles, I don't know that this team, this factor can be beat in this tournament. I think it's absolutely all the way through to the championship. And
yeah, this is
we're gonna keep talking about it. But
this
I
is
don't
the
see how
semantic side of the bracket because this is kind of confusing. And I picked the category, so I blame myself. I guess offensive line, I'm thinking a little bit more personnel. Like, are they going to get the right guys? And are the guys they have, will Trevor Penning pan out? Will Ryan Ramczyk play? Will they draft a guy in round 1? Will Nick Saldiveri pan out? I'm kind of putting all that in the offensive line. The new offense, I'm including Rick Dennison and John Benton and Clint Kubiak installing the right run game, that you're giving them a mediocre offensive line. Can they still make the run game work? Can they design an offense where Derek Carr can get rid of the ball quickly? Can they overcome mediocre talent on the offensive line and make a productive offense out of what they have to work with? For that reason, I'm kind of leaning toward new offense and everything it entails. I mean, can they get the most out of Carr? Can they get most out of their offensive line talent? Can they get the most out of Olave? Can they get more out of Alvin Kamara? Can they get more out of Kendre Miller? Like, I'm kind of leaning toward that, but I don't disagree that the thing that will derail it all is if the offensive line is just plain terrible.
The flip side of that, though, is they had a top 10 offense last year. So
didn't feel like it, but yeah.
Like, how much more, if they get more out of it, okay, but I don't even know if you can get more out of it if you can't block. So it comes back. I think the blocking, I don't think it matters if you have a system if you can't block. Like, I'm kind of like, if we both get a trump card here, like, I am throwing it down on this one and pushing the offensive line through, because like I feel like it's just such a critical thing. I think it influences the draft. I think it's going to influence our ability to get like other people that they could use for that new offense, because now you got Ramczyk out, which was an unplanned absence. Like, I think it just kind of just pales over everything. And I don't think it matters what plays you call for your quarterback or your run game if you can't block.
Let me ask you this. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm trying to figure it out as we go, because I think the winner of this game is going to win the entire thing. But would you rather, if somehow you could quantify this, would you rather have a just basic, average, fine, Dennis Allen level, 17 and 18 level offensive system and above average talent on the offensive line, or perfectly average, fine, 500 level talent on the offensive line, but one of the better? You would rather have Kyle Shanahan and mediocre talent, or, great offensive line talent and mediocre coaching?
Well, here's the thing. You can look at this system around the league, and there's a lot of mediocre offensive lines that have looked good because of this system. So if you get the mediocre, I think that the system elevates it. But I don't think the system can elevate
worse than mediocre.
Yeah, worse than mediocre. So
yeah.
I guess the way I'm
offensive line would not be number one if they just had their offensive line even from 2 years ago. It's in dire straits
average,
right now.
just average guys. But I think the thing is for me, like, I'm looking at this, and it's like one's a battle to 500, and if you don't get there, you're below 500, and everything breaks down. And then I think the other one kind of lifts you from that 500 point. So it's like you got to have one to get to the other. But I think this team's like battling a standard right now of like that 500 mark, and you don't want to be below it again. And I think if you go below it, things fall apart. So I'm just trying to get to like a baseline of confidence.
Offensive line is what could make this team. A lot of fans have been predicting 6 wins, 4 wins, disaster. They have never gotten there. The offensive line is what could actually bring them down.
So there's a single point here. Like I don't think the new offense can lift everything on its own, but the offensive line can drag everything down on its own.
Exactly.
So
I agree.
just think it carries a little bit of weight.
Offensive line is what could derail everything. Yeah, to use an old Sean Payton line when he once described Josh Hill as the front door, I think that's an even more apt description for the offensive line. They're literally the front door to everything else. And if you don't have your front door, it's all over. So offensive line has made the championship bracket.
I think either way, we're going to see a lot of quarterback movement to try to protect against
quick passes. Get rid of that ball.
Man, the first game of the COVID season, the Vegas game where they ran like all them bootlegs to Waller, like, just go steal those. Like, you might need them.
Derek Carr tore the Saints up doing that.
Yeah.
All right, this one's easy, right? Secondary versus pass rush. It's the pass rush.
Pass rush.
Yeah. We've already discussed them. Rewind if you didn't listen to the discussion, but it's pass rush in the championship versus the offensive line for sure.
Now.
What if they went against each other? Man. Let's just let them line up. Bad versus bad. The movable object versus the resistible force.
Oh man, we got the offensive line versus the pass rush.
I think this is going to be a pretty easy one. The pass rush could get better. The pass rush, like I said, Chase Young could be a revelation. God knows if Peyton Turner or Isaiah Foskey could be better. But if they're all if they don't live up to expectations, if they're what they were last year, there's enough guys. There's Cam Jordan. There's Carl Granderson. There's Tano Passanio. We think they'll add one more guy to this. If they all just perform, I don't think this team necessarily gets worse. I think, as we just discussed, the offensive line could just crater. I mean, the offensive line on its baseline might be worse to start with, and it could get way worse. I think the potential for disaster is greater on the offensive line. And, hey, if they draft a guy in the first round and he's like an all-rookie level stud at left tackle, there's room to get better, too. There are young guys like Penning or Saldivari who could do something we don't expect. So there's room for growth in both. I think there's more room for collapse on the offensive line.